My name is Tessa, 23 years old, and just a few days ago, the med school acceptance I'd spent years quietly fighting for became my greatest betrayal. The education trust my late mother painstakingly set up had vanished overnight, drained by my father Daniel under the toxic influence of his new wife Leanne. Everything I'd poured into becoming a doctor, the countless late-night shifts and skipped holidays, turned into the center of an ugly confrontation at my own childhood home when Leanne insisted I abandon my ridiculous medical ambitions to stop embarrassing the family. My refusal earned me more than just her cold sneer. It cost me my father's love, his respect evaporating before my eyes like smoke. "Ungrateful brat," Leanne hissed bitterly as my dad looked away, avoiding my pleading gaze, while my step-siblings Macy and Brock watched silently, smug expressions barely hidden. I didn't cry or beg like they expected. Instead, that humiliation ignited a quiet fire within me. My silence was my resolution. My resolve would prove stronger than their cruelty. But before I tell you how this quiet betrayal led to an explosive confrontation, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever sacrificed deeply for your family, because you have no idea what they'll do once the truth finally explodes into the open. Standing in the shadows that night, clutching the crumpled acceptance letter, I remembered my mother's quiet pride and relentless encouragement. "You're stronger than they know, Tessa," she would whisper, her voice still clear in my memory, even though she'd been gone 5 years. That strength felt buried under the weight of my family's disdain, but it wasn't gone, just hidden beneath their constant dismissal. For as long as I could remember, I'd been the odd one out. While Macy's beauty pageant wins and Brock's varsity trophies adorned the family mantelpiece, my academic medals quietly accumulated dust in my bedroom drawer, unnoticed and ignored. My passion for medicine, the dream I shared only with Mom, was simply another thing my family found embarrassingly boring. Yet it was precisely this overlooked passion that would become my lifeline. It was the thing I'd cling to desperately, silently rebuilding from nothing when all seemed lost. I would reclaim everything they'd stolen, and when I did, they'd finally see the power they'd foolishly underestimated. But first, I had to survive the cruelest night of all, the dreaded annual family dinner where secrets simmered and truths were ruthlessly buried beneath fake smiles. And little did they know, I'd be bringing secrets of my own. My history of invisibility began long before Leanne's poison seeped into our family. From childhood, I lived on the sidelines, the quiet bookworm who faded into the background, overshadowed by Macy and Brock's relentless pursuit of popularity. I remember clearly how, at my 10th grade award ceremony, I'd nervously waited in the auditorium, clutching an invitation that felt like validation itself. I'd won the district-wide science competition, an achievement that would have made my mother glow with pride. But when I glanced out from the stage, the seats my father had promised to fill remained painfully empty. He'd forgotten, or worse, chosen to prioritize Brock's football practice again. Macy later mocked the shiny trophy I'd brought home, laughing as she asked if science was just for people who couldn't make cheerleading. It was a familiar pattern, one I had slowly learned to accept. Every family gathering was filled with stories about Brock's latest touchdown or Macy's newest boyfriend, while my careful, earnest successes never merited a mention. Even after Mom passed away, the imbalance worsened. Without her gentle encouragement, my father drifted further, anchoring himself instead to Leanne's loud, demanding presence. Her voice filled the void Mom left behind, reshaping our family dynamic around superficial appearances and social standing. "Your dad deserves better than a bookish daughter hiding away," Leanne would often sneer at me. She effortlessly dismissed my straight-A transcripts as worthless compared to Macy's effortless social popularity. Gradually, even my father seemed to adopt her perspective, no longer glancing at the report cards I'd once proudly laid on the kitchen counter. One moment still burns clearly in my mind, the night I'd received my first college acceptance letter. Bursting with excitement, I'd rushed downstairs, heart hammering, eager for even the smallest shred of acknowledgement. But Dad barely glanced up from his newspaper, muttering an indifferent, "That's nice," before turning to ask Macy about her prom plans. Macy had smiled smugly, knowing her own achievements, mere milestones of popularity, would always overshadow my quiet victories. It was then I stopped sharing altogether. My dreams became a private rebellion, a silent fortress where their words couldn't reach me. Every academic achievement, every sleepless night of study, became part of an unseen world I fiercely guarded. I knew the truth. My father's new family could strip me of my inheritance, ignore my existence, but they couldn't erase my drive. I'd built myself invisibly, brick by brick, until the day I'd stand stronger than they'd ever imagined. And when that day came, they'd discover that the daughter they had discarded had quietly become their most formidable adversary, one they'd never see coming. My aha moment came quietly at 3 a.m., beneath the flickering glow of a cracked library lamp. The loss of my education fund had ripped away my security, but it had also freed something powerful within me, a gritty, raw determination I'd never fully known. Sitting alone that night, surrounded by textbooks, exhaustion, and half-finished cups of cold coffee, I made a promise. They would never hold power over me again. I started the next day, quietly applying for scholarships and taking on 2 jobs. By day, I stacked books at the campus library. By night, I wiped tables at a local diner, enduring dismissive customers and aching feet, fueled only by sheer stubbornness. I quickly learned how to juggle my studies, refusing to give my family the satisfaction of seeing me fail. Every grade, every paycheck was a quiet act of defiance, a whispered declaration that my life was still mine to build. Months blurred into late nights and early mornings. Friends gently asked if I needed help, worried at how thin I'd grown, how deep the shadows beneath my eyes had become, but I politely declined. My struggle had to remain hidden, private, if I wanted to protect the fragile dignity I'd carefully rebuilt. Then, finally came a letter, a prestigious scholarship I'd quietly pursued but hardly dared hope for. It covered tuition, housing, even a stipend, all secured by the raw honesty of an essay I'd written about overcoming family betrayal. Holding the acceptance letter felt surreal, a triumph so powerful I trembled. But instead of sharing my victory, I folded the letter and placed it quietly in my drawer, beside old trophies and forgotten report cards. It felt safer hidden, shielded from the dismissive stares that would have drained it of its meaning. Over time, my quiet resilience paid off. Scholarships multiplied, acceptance letters followed. Soon, I'd not only reclaimed my path to medical school, but I stood poised to graduate with honors. Honors I earned in silence, through sheer determination and the stubborn refusal to break. Yet, even as I stood on the threshold of everything I'd worked for, I couldn't shake the gnawing dread in my stomach. The annual family dinner was approaching, an unavoidable tradition. My father expected me there, oblivious to the turmoil beneath my polite smiles. Leanne, Macy, and Brock would be watching, ready to seize upon any weakness or stumble. But they wouldn't find one. Not this time. My secret success was like armor, invisible yet impenetrable. I would walk into that dinner stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever attack they'd prepared. Because this year, I knew something they didn't. I wasn't showing up as their quiet disappointment. I was showing up as their equal. And soon, they'd realize they'd severely underestimated me. Today, the eve of that dreaded family dinner, began quietly, deceptively peaceful. Sunlight filtered softly through my apartment window, casting gentle patterns on the medical textbooks stacked neatly on my desk. I stared at the white coat draped carefully across the chair, embroidered neatly with Tessa Dawson, M.D. It was a promise of a future, one built despite every hurdle my family had thrown my way. And tomorrow, I would finally claim it publicly, standing among my peers at graduation, reclaiming my own name with pride. Yet, despite that hopeful promise, my stomach churned with familiar dread at the thought of tonight. Every year my father insisted we uphold this illusion of family unity, gathering around Leanne's obsessively curated dinner table. The image was always perfect, a shining mask hiding bitter truths. And every year, I'd endured it silently, absorbing Leanne's biting comments and Macy's thinly veiled sneers. But tonight felt different, heavier somehow, as if all the resentment simmering beneath the surface might finally boil over. Reluctantly, I chose an outfit. A modest dress, unassuming and neutral, designed to blend in rather than stand out. It was safer to stay invisible around them. As I dressed, my phone buzzed gently. It was my closest friend, Piper, checking in. "You ready for tonight? Remember, you don't owe them anything. Hold your ground." Her words brought warmth, comforting, yet also sharpened with clarity. Piper knew the truth, the messy reality behind my polite smiles. She had become part of my chosen family, the one that truly understood loyalty and love. But even her support couldn't fully quiet the anxiety twisting within me. As evening drew closer, my heart pounded heavily. I drove to my father's house through streets lined with memories, some comforting, others deeply painful. Pulling into the driveway, I hesitated, staring at the facade of perfection. Neatly trimmed hedges, gleaming windows, a front porch that felt both inviting and hostile. This house, once home, had become my personal battlefield. Taking a shaky breath, I stepped out of the car, feeling the familiar dread tightening in my chest. Macy's gleaming sports car and Brock's motorcycle were already parked prominently out front, symbols of their flashy success. My modest sedan seemed out of place, like me. But tonight, something inside me felt different, stronger. Beneath my anxiety was a quiet resolve, the knowledge that no matter how tonight unfolded, they couldn't break me anymore. I had built something powerful, entirely on my own. They could dismiss it, ridicule it, but they couldn't erase it. I'd already won, even if they couldn't see it yet. Still, standing in front of that intimidating door, I paused, gathering strength for the silent battle ahead. And then, with my chin lifted and heart racing, I stepped forward into the inevitable storm. The door swung open, and instantly, Leanne's smile, falsely sweet as ever, met my wary eyes. "Tessa, how nice of you to finally show up," she cooed, her words laced with gentle venom. She took my coat and scanned me from head to toe, eyes narrowing subtly. "Interesting choice of dress. Very practical." My stomach tightened. Practical, her polite code word for cheap. I forced a polite smile, already feeling the weight of her judgment pressing down on me. Inside, the room buzzed with superficial conversation. Macy was holding court, charming everyone with exaggerated tales of her latest vacation, while Brock lounged comfortably nearby, nodding in easy agreement. My father stood quietly to the side, nursing a glass of whiskey, eyes fixed absently on the floor. He barely glanced my way as I entered. "Tess," Macy called loudly, her voice sugary sweet, drawing everyone's attention. "Still spending your nights studying? Must be so thrilling. Honestly, we worried you'd forgotten how to socialize." I swallowed the embarrassment rising like bile. "Some of us actually have real careers to pursue," I replied lightly, surprised at my own bravery. Macy's eyes flashed briefly, a dangerous spark behind her carefully maintained mask. Dinner itself was an exercise in endurance. Leanne's carefully arranged feast tasted bitter on my tongue, overshadowed by her relentless digs about my ambitions. "Medical school is admirable, Tessa," she drawled, sipping wine, "but is it really worth sacrificing a family life?" My father finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine for a brief, painful moment before darting away. He said nothing, and that silence felt sharper than any words he might have spoken. "I guess it's easier," Macy chimed in, her voice dripping disdain, "since you don't have many social commitments. More free time for studying, right?" Around the table, polite laughter rippled, each soft chuckle feeling like a needle piercing my skin. My pulse thudded angrily beneath my temples. Why did I subject myself to this, year after year? Was this hollow ritual worth it? Leanne leaned forward, her voice low and mockingly gentle. "Your mother meant well, I'm sure, but she'd be disappointed you didn't choose a life with more balance." I froze, breath hitching painfully in my chest. She'd crossed a line I hadn't realized still existed. Mentioning my mother, weaponizing her memory, sent a fresh wave of grief crashing through me. I glanced toward my father again, pleading silently for some sign of protection, support, anything. But he simply shifted uncomfortably in his seat, eyes downcast, abandoning me once more. In that moment, my quiet resolve hardened into something unbreakable. Their approval was meaningless. I owed them nothing, least of all my dignity. Then Leanne's gaze settled on me, eyes glittering triumphantly. "Maybe tonight we can finally resolve some important family matters." My heart sank, understanding immediately that the evening's cruelty had only just begun. A chill filled the room as my father finally cleared his throat, his voice heavy with discomfort. "Tessa, there's something we've been meaning to discuss with you." His eyes flickered briefly to Leanne, who watched intently, her expression calm and calculating. My heartbeat quickened, dread settling heavily in my chest. "What is it?" I managed, forcing steadiness into my voice. He hesitated, eyes sliding away from mine. We've decided it's best for everyone involved, especially for you, if we officially part ways, financially and otherwise. Shock reverberated through me, ice cold and dizzying. You're disowning me? My voice trembled with disbelief and my fingers tightened around the silverware, grounding myself against the surreal cruelty unfolding before me. It's not personal, darling, Leanne purred, her smile perfectly poised yet edged with malice. We simply think you need the opportunity to grow independently. Consider it tough love. Macy smirked openly, enjoying my humiliation. Brock looked away, visibly uncomfortable, but silent, complicit. My father's silence screamed louder than any words. He'd allowed Leanne to strip away my trust fund, and now he allowed her to erase me from their lives entirely. Anger rose swiftly, hot and bright, fueling the quiet strength I'd carefully nurtured. This was Mom's wish, I whispered, my voice steady but sharp. She trusted you. For a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker in my father's eyes. Regret, perhaps shame. But then Leanne spoke again, effectively silencing him. Things change, Tessa. We have to look to the future. Macy and Brock are building legacies we can all be proud of. Your path is just not something that aligns with our family's values anymore. Her words were like a slap, each syllable dripping with disdain, yet I stood firm, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Around the table, the air grew tense, stifling. Macy shifted nervously, perhaps realizing they had crossed an irreversible boundary, while Brock finally met my gaze, eyes briefly apologetic. But it was my father's betrayal that cut deepest, a wound fresh and raw. The man who once promised to protect me now discarded me, his own daughter, to appease the vanity of a woman whose heart held no kindness. Fine, I finally said, quiet but unyielding. If that's what you want. My calm acceptance seemed to surprise them, momentarily unsettling Leanne's carefully crafted facade. She had expected tears, begging perhaps, anything that would reinforce her power over me, but I refused to grant her that satisfaction. Instead, I pushed back my chair, dignity intact, knowing that my true strength was something she could never take. Yet, as I stood to leave, my phone vibrated sharply. I glanced down at the unfamiliar number and felt an odd sense of clarity. Tonight's cruelty had already shattered me, surely nothing could hurt worse, but I had no idea how deeply that call would change everything. Stepping into the hallway, away from their poisonous stares, I shakily answered the call. Hello? Tessa Dawson? A confident voice asked warmly, cutting through my swirling emotions. Yes, speaking, I managed, bracing myself for another blow. My name is Clara Bennett, from the Heritage Medical Scholars Foundation. I'm calling personally to congratulate you. Your application deeply impressed our committee. We've chosen you as this year's recipient of our full-ride scholarship, including mentorship with top surgeons nationwide. Your resilience inspired us. My breath caught, the air suddenly too thin. Tears pricked sharply behind my eyelids. Are you serious? Clara laughed gently, sincere and comforting. Completely. You've overcome incredible obstacles. We believe in you, Tessa, and we're excited to support your future. Gratitude swelled powerfully within me, colliding with the lingering ache of betrayal. It felt surreal, the timing impossibly perfect. In a single phone call, I'd reclaim not just my dreams, but my dignity. Thank you, I whispered, voice thick with emotion. This means everything. Hanging up, I stood for a moment, pulse racing, overwhelmed by relief. My struggle hadn't been unnoticed after all. People believed in me, recognized me, not as the disappointment my family saw, but as someone strong enough to rise despite them. Behind me, footsteps approached. I turned sharply, finding Leanne hovering suspiciously, eyes narrowed. More bad news, Tessa? She mocked softly, expecting weakness. No, I replied, surprising myself with my composure. Actually, amazing news. She raised an eyebrow skeptically, dismissing my words. Good luck with whatever little plan you've cooked up to salvage your pride, darling. We both know it won't last. My confidence surged unexpectedly, drowning out her venom. Maybe your pride is the one that needs salvaging, Leanne. Returning to the dining room, the tension had become palpable. My father shifted awkwardly, Brock looked down, and Macy smirked, oblivious to how quickly the tables had turned. The moment hung taut, waiting to shatter. Leanne cleared her throat expectantly. Ready to apologize, Tessa? I smiled softly, shaking my head. Actually, I just received life-changing news. I've been awarded the Heritage Medical Scholars Foundation Scholarship, a full ride through medical school. They recognized my resilience, something clearly invisible to this family. Stunned silence filled the room, heavier than anything before. Macy's smug expression vanished instantly, replaced by shock. Brock sat straighter, genuinely impressed. My father's eyes widened, suddenly filled with regret and confusion. Leanne visibly paled, speechless for once. Her carefully constructed illusion of superiority fractured before everyone's eyes, her words rendered meaningless by reality itself. For the first time in years, power shifted unmistakably. In that instant, my quiet, hidden victories broke through their walls of contempt, proving I had risen far beyond their expectations, and far beyond their control. Leanne's confident composure cracked visibly, her mouth opening and closing without forming words. Macy stared at me, disbelief coloring her previously smug expression, while Brock quietly nodded in a newfound respect, perhaps finally understanding my hidden strength, but it was my father's reaction I saw most clearly. His face had paled, eyes glistening with regret that arrived far too late. "Tessa," he started weakly, his voice strained. Didn't what?" I interrupted quietly but firmly. "Didn't expect me to succeed without your help? Or didn't think I'd ever find out about the money you stole?" The accusation hung in the air, heavy and indisputable. Leanne's eyes darted nervously around the table. "Careful what accusations you throw around, Tessa," she hissed, desperately, scrambling to regain control. "I have proof," I replied evenly, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Bank statements, legal documents, everything. Mom's trust fund drained and transferred into your accounts." I turned to my father, watching him wilt beneath the weight of undeniable truth. "Did you really think I'd never figure it out, or were you just too ashamed to admit it?" Leanne stood abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "You ungrateful." "No," I said firmly, standing tall, confronting her directly. "You don't get to label me. Ungrateful is stealing from your husband's daughter, betraying your family's trust for appearances. Ungrateful is using my mother's memory against me. I worked quietly, tirelessly, and succeeded without your support or permission." Around the table, shock gave way to discomfort. Macy's cheeks flushed deep red with embarrassment, while Brock shifted guiltily. My father sat rigidly, avoiding my gaze, drowning in the realization of his mistakes. I stepped back, letting silence stretch meaningfully. "You've officially disowned me," I said clearly, voice echoing slightly in the tension-filled room. "But the truth is, I walked away from this family a long time ago. Tonight just made it official." As I turned to leave, my father finally spoke, voice barely audible. "Tessa, please, wait." I paused at the doorway, glancing over my shoulder. "You made your choice, now I'm making mine." Stepping outside, the crisp night air filled my lungs, cleansing away the bitter residue of their cruelty. The door closed behind me, leaving the house in stunned silence, a family broken by their own selfishness. Sitting in my car, hands shaking with adrenaline, I allowed myself a quiet moment of triumph. Tonight was painful but necessary, a decisive ending that freed me completely. They could scramble now, desperate to reclaim what they'd destroyed, but it was too late. My strength, carefully built in secret, was now public, undeniable, and entirely mine. They had underestimated me one final time, and paid dearly for their mistake. Driving away from that house felt like leaving behind an old, suffocating skin, one I had long outgrown. The farther I got, the freer I felt, the tension slowly lifting from my shoulders. My phone buzzed, lighting up with messages from Piper and a few other friends, all anxiously awaiting updates. My real family, the one I'd chosen, was eager to know I was safe. I pulled into Piper's driveway, where soft lights illuminated the porch, welcoming and warm. As I approached, she threw the door open, pulling me into a fierce hug. "You okay?" she whispered, voice thick with concern. "Actually," I exhaled deeply, sinking into her embrace. "I'm better than okay." Inside, my closest friends had gathered, offering hugs, gentle smiles, and supportive words. The atmosphere felt light, filled with genuine affection rather than the manipulative tension I'd endured just hours earlier. Someone pressed a mug of hot tea into my hands and I sat down, finally able to breathe fully again. "So," Piper said softly, settling beside me, eyes bright with pride, "tell us everything." As I recounted the evening's events, each painful moment met with gasps and murmurs of disbelief. something remarkable happened. The shame I'd carried for years, the weight of invisibility and inadequacy, began to dissolve. In this safe circle, my truth mattered. I mattered. You deserve so much more than they ever gave you, Piper said firmly when I finished, her voice strong with conviction. I smiled softly. Maybe tonight I finally realized that. Conversations flowed freely around the room, filled with warmth, laughter, and comforting honesty. Friends who knew my struggles celebrated my quiet triumph, genuinely proud of the person I'd become. There was no hidden agenda, no comparison, just authentic joy in each other's successes. Eventually, as the night grew quieter, Piper leaned closer, her voice gentle yet certain. You realize you've built something extraordinary, right? Not just the scholarship or med school, but this here tonight. People who love you exactly as you are. Tears blurred my vision briefly. It feels incredible, I admitted softly, like finally coming home. She squeezed my hand gently, understanding without words. Family isn't blood, Tessa. It's where you're valued. Never settle for less. As I sat quietly, absorbing the comfort of those words, the painful echoes of my father's rejection began to fade, overshadowed by a deeper, more powerful truth. The people surrounding me, sharing in my joy, standing beside me through darkness. This was family. Chosen family, built on trust and genuine care. Tonight I'd finally stopped chasing acceptance from those incapable of giving it, and instead found it waiting patiently, lovingly, in the hearts of the people who truly mattered. For the first time I understood clearly, I was never alone. The days following my confrontation became a delicate dance of setting boundaries, firm, unwavering, necessary boundaries. Predictably, my phone soon flooded with messages from my family, each one more manipulative than the last. Leanne's frantic attempts to talk things through, Macy's awkward apologies laced with self-serving excuses, even Brock's hesitant messages, were all met with polite but firm silence. It was my father's calls, however, that tested me the most. His messages started vague and cautious. Can we talk? Then grew increasingly desperate, attempting to remind me of a bond he'd shattered himself. When he finally knocked at my apartment door a week later, I hesitated, hand frozen on the doorknob, heart twisting painfully. Taking a steadying breath, I opened the door slightly, enough to face him, but signaling clearly that this boundary wouldn't be breached easily. Tessa? He began softly, eyes tired and haunted by regret. Please let me explain. What's left to explain? My voice was surprisingly steady, guarded, but gentle. He swallowed painfully. I didn't realize, I knew what was happening, but Leanne said it was necessary. I trusted her too much. I sighed, the familiar ache of disappointment rising sharply. You didn't just trust her, you betrayed me. Mom trusted you, and you chose her greed over your own daughter. His eyes dropped in shame. I know I did, but please, give me a chance to. My heart ached, but clarity held firm. Some things can't be fixed, Dad. The trust we had, it's gone. His eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Tess. I know, I replied softly, my voice gentle but resolute. And I forgive you, but forgiving isn't forgetting, and it definitely doesn't mean allowing you back in. Not now, maybe not ever. He nodded slowly, absorbing my words, visibly shaken yet respectful of my choice. For the first time in memory, he finally saw me clearly, not as an extension of himself or an inconvenient disappointment, but as someone strong enough to choose self-respect over family obligation. After he left, I closed the door quietly, a deep breath shuddering through me. Setting that boundary had cost me, but I knew its value. My peace, my dignity, my carefully rebuilt life deserved protection. I began drafting new rules for myself, simple yet powerful. My peace is not negotiable. Respect isn't optional, it's mandatory. My worth isn't determined by others' validation. Each rule became a stone in the fortress surrounding my new life, protecting everything I'd worked so hard to reclaim. I would never again allow toxic influences to drain me. Anyone entering now would need to prove their sincerity through actions, not empty promises. With boundaries clearly defined, something remarkable happened. The heavy weight of uncertainty lifted, leaving only clarity, strength, and peace. My future belonged entirely to me, built upon foundations stronger than any family betrayal. For the first time, the world felt genuinely safe, because I had finally learned to protect myself. Over the following months, life settled into a new rhythm, one defined by purpose, clarity, and newfound confidence. The scholarship catapulted my medical career, opening doors to prestigious opportunities previously unimaginable. Each success felt sweeter, knowing it was built on my resilience, forged through quiet determination rather than family connections. But beyond my own career, I felt a deeper calling to reclaim something more meaningful: my mother's legacy. The trust fund had symbolized her belief in education, opportunity, and kindness, values my family had tarnished through selfishness. Now, I had the means and platform to restore them, authentically and publicly. With Piper's support, I quietly established the Katherine Dawson Foundation, named proudly after my mother. It would provide scholarships, mentorship, and emotional support to students facing adversity or family rejection, just like I had. My story, once hidden in shame, became the foundation's strongest asset, a testament to overcoming betrayal with dignity and strength. The day we officially launched, my heart filled with nervous anticipation. Friends, mentors, even media gathered as I spoke publicly for the first time, sharing my story openly, honestly. My voice trembled slightly at first, but strengthened with each word. I created this foundation because I know firsthand the isolation of feeling invisible, the pain of betrayal by those meant to support you most, I explained clearly, confidently. My mother believed fiercely in kindness, in supporting dreams. Today, I honor her memory by helping others realize their own worth, their potential, no matter who tries to hold them back. The applause that followed overwhelmed me, but one reaction stood out powerfully. A young woman approached afterward, eyes glistening with tears. "Your story gives me hope," she whispered softly. "I've felt invisible my whole life, but today I know I can change that." Her words hit deeply, affirming every painful choice I'd made to reclaim my voice, my dignity, my legacy. Moments like this proved beyond doubt that I had truly taken control of my story, transforming pain into purpose. News of the foundation quickly spread, inspiring widespread support, but inevitably, whispers of my family's betrayal resurfaced, bringing fresh attempts from Leanne and Macy to repair their image publicly. Yet now, their words were powerless, their motives transparent. I calmly stood my ground, choosing compassion over bitterness, dignity over revenge. My quiet strength resonated clearly, undeniable. I had reclaimed my family name on my own terms, restoring it through integrity and authentic compassion, not superficial status or empty reputation. As the foundation flourished, the painful memories faded further, replaced by stories of hope, perseverance, and triumph. Each student supported, each dream nurtured, helped heal wounds I'd once thought impossible to mend. Finally, I'd reclaimed something my family had nearly destroyed, not only my future but the legacy of genuine kindness my mother had entrusted to me. Now, it would thrive, untainted, rooted firmly in authenticity and love. Sitting alone in my favorite cafe one peaceful afternoon sipping a latte, I found myself reflecting quietly on the turbulent path that brought me here. Sunlight streamed gently through the window, warming my face as I watched people passing by. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, each carrying hidden stories of strength and resilience beneath calm exteriors. It struck me profoundly that the acceptance and validation I'd spent years desperately seeking from my family had always existed within me. I'd chased their approval, craving acknowledgement from those least capable of offering genuine acceptance. Yet the moment I stopped seeking external validation, I discovered something infinitely more powerful: self-respect rooted deeply in authenticity. My family's rejection, once unbearably painful, had ultimately freed me, forcing me to build a life truly reflective of my own values. My chosen family, loyal friends and mentors, filled my life with genuine love and unwavering support. Their presence reminded me daily that true acceptance wasn't earned through appeasing others, but through living openly, courageously, and truthfully. I opened my notebook, the pages well-worn from months of reflections, ideas, and lessons learned. Slowly, I wrote a simple truth that had emerged clearly from my journey: my worth has always belonged to me, not granted by others. Writing those words felt profoundly healing, affirming the peace I'd worked so hard to achieve. No longer bound by shame or rejection, I felt lighter, freer, wholly at peace within myself. Closing my notebook, I smiled softly, realizing for the first time just how powerful that peace truly was. It wasn't loud, flashy, or externally validated. It was quiet, steady, deeply rooted, unshakable by anyone else's opinions or judgments. That afternoon marked a subtle yet significant turning point. My life's direction was now defined entirely by my values, my choices, my voice. No one else held power over my sense of self-worth, it belonged entirely to me. As I left the cafe, stepping into the gentle sunlight, clarity washed over me. I had truly reclaimed my story, not with bitterness or revenge, but through quiet strength and genuine kindness. My mother's legacy thrived powerfully, not because of my family's acceptance, but precisely because I'd finally learned I didn't need it. The validation I'd always chased externally had finally settled quietly inside me, where it had belonged all along. I walked forward, heart calm, knowing that whatever came next, I had the strength and clarity to face it, no longer burdened by expectations that didn't align with my true self. And for the first time, I knew without question, I was enough, exactly as I was. Have you ever felt invisible within your own family? Ever chased acceptance from people who could never truly value you? My journey taught me one critical lesson. Sometimes the validation we're desperately seeking from others already exists inside ourselves. If my story resonated with you, please share your experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your struggles, triumphs, and how you've reclaimed your self-worth, because I promise you're not alone. Remember, true acceptance doesn't come from chasing the approval of those who can't see your worth. It comes from the strength and clarity of knowing who you truly are, without apology. If this journey has touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs a reminder that it's perfectly okay and incredibly empowering to define success on their own terms. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Never settle for invisibility. Reclaim your worth, find your peace, and always remember, you deserve kindness, compassion, and genuine love, especially from yourself. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. Together, let's inspire each other to keep moving forward, reclaiming our stories one brave step at a time. Ask, reflect, share.